Welcome to the Anxiety Relief Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Rolfe, the Anxiety Coach, here to help you conquer anxiety and build a calm, confident life. In each episode, we'll explore the tools, stories, and insights to help you take control of anxiety and live life on your terms. Without further ado, let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Anxiety Relief Podcast. Today, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people experience, but they do not necessarily always have the words to explain it. And that is this idea that anxiety can actually start to feel like part of your identity. Not just something that you experience from time to time, not just a phase, not just a struggle you're working through, but something that feels like it's who you are. And you might have thoughts like, I'm just an anxious person. This is just me. I've always been this way. This is how people know me. And when anxiety has been around for a long time, that can start to feel very true. Now, I want to be really clear from the start here. When people say things like being addicted to anxiety, what they usually do not mean is that you want anxiety or enjoy it. Of course you don't, right? That is common sense. You do not want to have anxiety. What they usually mean is that their mind and body can become used to having anxiety. It becomes familiar and you become used to living on edge, used to overthinking, used to checking how you feel, used to watching yourself all the time, used to scanning for what you might do or what you should do or what might go wrong. You might be used to even organizing your life in a certain way so that it's all based around how anxious you think you might feel. And after a while, something that started as a reaction becomes a pattern. And then that pattern becomes familiar. And when something becomes familiar, the mind starts to label it as part of you. So I'm just going to say that again, just because it's a real key point there. So when something becomes familiar, the mind starts to label it as a part of you, and that can be your anxiety. And that is where things can get really tricky. Because once anxiety starts to feel like part of your identity, recovery can feel a lot harder. Not because you cannot recover. No, not at all. But because it starts to feel like you are being asked to let go of something that has become strangely tied to who you think you are. Now, I'll give you an example of this. If you've spent months or even years thinking of yourself as the anxious one, the worrier, the overthinker, the one who struggles, then even the idea of being calm can feel unfamiliar, unknown, not you. And it can feel distant. It can feel uncomfortable. And that sounds odd at first because most people think, surely if I felt calm, I would just love it. And yes, part of you would, but another part of you may feel unsettled by it, simply because it is new. The anxious mind likes what is familiar, even when what is familiar is unpleasant. Now, that is such an important point there. The brain does not always prefer what is best for you. Very often, it prefers what is known. So if your anxiety has become your normal, your system can keep pulling you back towards it. Not because it's good, not because that's the best thing for you, but because it is familiar. This is one reason why people can start to feel stuck. They're not only dealing with anxious thoughts and feelings, they're also dealing with a self-image that's formed around those thoughts and feelings. They may even start to describe themselves through anxiety. They may say no to things because I'm no good at situations like that. They may avoid places because I know what I'm like. They may pull back from opportunities, relationships, travel, work, social events, because anxiety has taught them to expect struggle. And the more this happens, the more anxiety starts shaping their life. Then life starts reinforcing that belief. For example, see, I really am this anxious person. But that is not your identity. That is a pattern. That is a set of learned responses. That is your nervous system that has become sensitized. That is the mind that has practiced fear for long enough that it's become convincing. But it is not who you are. And I think that distinction matters so, so much. Because if anxiety is your identity, then it feels fixed. If anxiety is a pattern, then it can be changed. Another thing that often happens is people become very aware of how they think others see them. Now, I'm going to say that again because I remember when I first started learning about this concept, and it kind of blew my mind in more aspects than just anxiety in my entire life. So I just want to say this again. It can feel strange when you become aware of how you think others see you. So you will have an idea in your head of how you believe other people perceive you to be. And you can start worrying that other people view you as fragile, nervous, awkward, incapable, too sensitive, or someone who always struggles. They might think, people can tell I'm anxious. They probably see me as weak. They expect me to be like this. This is just the role I play now. And that can actually create a lot of shame because now it is not just about how you feel, it's about how you imagine you are being seen. And when that happens, people often become even more self-conscious. They monitor themselves more. They try even harder to hide symptoms. They think more about how they are coming across. And of course, all of that keeps the anxiety going. Because anxiety loves self-focus, and not in a good way. It loves constant self-monitoring. It loves you checking how you feel, how you look, how you sound, how you seem. So the more you become caught up in the idea of anxiety being a part of you and part of how others see you, the more trapped you can feel inside. But here is the good news. Just because anxiety has become familiar, it does not mean it is permanent. Just because it shaped part of your life does not mean it is your identity. Just because you have repeated a pattern many, many times does not mean that that pattern cannot change. It does not mean you are broken. You are not doomed to stay this way. And you are not just an anxious person in the way that your mind is very likely telling you that you are. You are a person who has learned anxiety very well, a person whose mind and body have become over-practiced in fear, a person who's probably spent a long time surviving, coping, avoiding, overthinking, and trying to protect yourself. But that is very different. Because what is learned can be unlearned. What is practiced can be changed with new practice. What feels automatic now does not have to stay automatic forever. And this is why anxiety recovery is not about becoming a completely different person. It is about peeling away what anxiety has actually covered up. It's about seeing more clearly who you are underneath the fear, underneath the habits, underneath the constant anticipation of danger. It is about no longer letting anxiety write your identity for you. That does not mean everything changes overnight. No. It does not mean you never feel anxious again. Like if your goal was to never ever feel anxious again, you're setting yourself up for failure there. It does not mean there is some perfect version of you waiting on the other side. But it does mean you can stop building your whole sense of self around anxiety. You can stop introducing yourself to people as the anxious one, or even thinking that whenever you meet someone. You can stop assuming that every thought, every feeling, every sensation means something about who you are. Sometimes it just means your system has learned a pattern. And your job now is not to fight yourself. It is to gently and consistently, and that's a key word, consistently, teach your mind and body something new. So if anxiety starts to feel like your identity, I want you to remember this. You are not anxiety. You are not your fearful thoughts. You are not your symptoms. You are not your worst moments. You are not the label your mind has given you. You are, however, a person who has been caught in a pattern. And patterns can change. And that is where hope comes in. Not false hope, real hope. Because I've seen it happen so many times before. People who were convinced this was just who they were. People who thought they would always feel trapped. People who thought anxiety had become too deeply wired into them. And yet, with the right understanding, the right approach, the right support, things began to shift. Not because they become someone else, but because they stopped confusing anxiety with identity. So if this episode resonates with you, let this be a reminder you need today. Anxiety may have taken up a lot of space in your life, but it is not you. And recovery is not about losing yourself. It's about finding more of yourself again. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Anxiety Relief Podcast. If this helped you, please feel free to share it with someone else who you think may need to hear it. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's listened to the episode so far. Please continue to do so to help this grow, to get out and as a community, help more people beat their anxiety and overcome it, get relief from it. And if you want more support, of course, you can head over to my website and download my free ebook, The Anxiety Relief Roadmap. My website is www.rossrolf.com. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to the Anxiety Relief Podcast. I hope today's episode left you feeling a little more calm, confident, and in control. Remember, small steps every day can lead to a big transformation in your life. If you found this episode helpful, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who you think might benefit. For more tools and resources, head over to my website at www.rossrolf.com. And don't forget to join the Anxiety Relief Hub on Facebook, which is a supportive community where you can connect, share, and grow. Until next time.